Hello, friends. Welcome back to the podcast. Your host, Caroline Offenstein here. And today we have Katie Crokus on for a second time. Hello, Katie.
Hi, a much different time, if I recall correctly. But yes, thanks for
Oh
having me
yeah.
back.
Yeah, if anyone's curious, you were on if you just search glucose, I don't know what episode it was, but we were both wearing continuous glucose monitors to be like total nerds for a little while. And we talked about that a lot. I think that was a really good conversation, but you're
It
right.
was. And
Today,
yeah, I think I still stand by most things that I said on that. I should go listen again. I feel like it was pretty informative. But you're right, today's different.
yeah, today is going to be how we moved from being kind of those obsessed health nerds to a little bit more, I would certainly call it balanced today. So let's kind of start with that. Like, it's quick intro to who you are, say hello, maybe like a little bit of life update of like then versus now. Then could be as
So,
far back as you want.
okay, I think a lot of people, if you followed my journey and your journey, we've sort of been in sync for a lot of years. And I'd say probably just before COVID is when I came on the scene on Instagram. And it was a time when people who were getting the most clicks were people who were dieting and changing their bodies and then sharing their stories. And it was just a meteoric rise. And I didn't understand why suddenly everybody wanted to hear all of these insider tips. Like I just had all of these great answers because of how I looked on the outside. And that really snowballed, cannonballed, I should say, into me looking for a coach. And that coach, I mean, it's kind of destiny now. That coach became you, but I was looking for someone to kind of help me maintain what I had achieved through the stress of COVID. I mean, that was a really stressful time for a lot of people, and there was a lot of unknowns. And so, on top of that stress, I really wanted to be able to maintain everything I was doing. And so,
And
one
wait,
thing led to
when you
another.
say maintain, you were talking about maintain a lean physique because you were like shredded.
Exactly. I was
Yeah.
not looking to lose weight. I had used macro tracking and strength training to get to the point where I was, and I there even back then probably 2018, 2019, I knew that most people don't stay that way because I had seen enough on Instagram and I'd seen enough people in my own community go from being shredded but not being able to maintain it. And I was like, oh, all I need is guidance. I just need someone to kind of hold my hand and make sure that I'm doing the right things, and then I can have it all. And or by all, I can maintain that and carry on with the life that I want. And so, as one would expect, that led to a lot of things in that category, in that arena, imploding. And I had to sort of find myself and rebuild, like I dismantle a lot of different things, both like physically and mentally, and find a way to rebuild from the ground up, which took a lot longer and was, in my opinion, much harder than a lot of the work I put into anything related to my physique, which I guess brings me to where we are today.
And your whole jam was like macros, right? Because you've put out recipe
Absolutely.
books about macros. Like you were in it. Macros were
Yes.
life.
Macros were everything, and I loved being in the kitchen. That was one thing I knew for sure. So it was really easy to continue to share what I was doing because everything I was creating I thought was pretty tasty and also happened to be aligned with diet culture in a way that really was allowing you to put your effort into things minimally, but get a lot out of it when it came to your nutrition. So it was a lot of like bulk planning and meal prep and protein leading recipes and low fat. And so it wasn't something that was highly sustainable. In fact, what finally got me to the point of realizing that I had to sort of shift gears was, besides just being exhausted and overtrained a little bit and under recovered, I had gut permeability issues, which a lot of people call leaky gut. I think it's called intestinal permeability, where basically you're kind of run down your small intestine to the point that little particles of food can get through, and then just everything triggers pain in your abdomen area. And I went to a host of naturopaths and hormonal influencers, that like a bevy of them, and none of them really, until you, Caroline, came to me with what I needed to hear, was that it was just like I needed a healthy dose of self-compassion. I needed to be well fed. I needed to take time to rest. And instead of looking outward for my next move, I needed to focus inside. And that was just like the hardest prescription I had ever been given.
Yeah. And I think, gosh, was that really 2020?
So we
Maybe it
started together in
was.
2020, and I think I finally, I'm going to say broke down in 2021.
To
I
like,
remember in August of 2020, that was, I got on a plane with my husband. We came out to Colorado for, I think, what was the first time. And he knew I needed to get out and I needed to escape and I needed to get off of Instagram for a little while and just kind of reset because again, I wasn't sleeping. I was exhausted. My digestion was so slow because of all the fiber and the protein and the same like 10 or 12 foods that I was eating over and over again. It was just this recipe for internal trauma for me. And it was time for a shift, but we didn't know what to do, especially because I had seen doctors because my period was long gone, like for years. It had been, I hadn't seen it. And on paper, I looked great. Like medical doctors, I was still going to my annual checkups. Um, got validation that all things were good and your period's gone well, you're not in childbearing years anymore anyway, so it's probably not that big a deal. That was what one of my doctors told me. And then there's the other extreme where there's naturopaths who have all of these prescriptive supplements that
like
would
take
probably help.
thousands of dollars of supplements. Yeah.
Over the top, exactly. So
Hmm.
it was really hard to find guidance, and I think I needed someone to tell me that I just needed to gain some weight and sort of redirect myself. But there was that voice didn't exist. Nobody was saying that. I think today on Instagram, you have a lot more people on social media who are having this conversation. But this conversation is also kind of a death sentence for people on Instagram, right? I mean, not every, when you broach this topic, there are a lot of feelings, that's for sure.
Yeah. Gosh, that's just such divine timing that like we found each other at that time period because when I think of where my coaching was in like 2020, 2021, I was also burnt out from every woman that came to me. It was fat loss, fat loss, fat loss. That's what I want. And that was my niche, more or less. Like that is what I coached people on for what, like 5 years up until that
Mm-hmm.
point. And yeah, so like when we started working together, must have just been like the start of when I started shifting and
Mm-hmm.
went out on my own and was like, hey, let's start taking care of ourselves more.
Yeah.
Because at that time, 2020 is when I stopped bodybuilding. That was like I did 2 pro shows that year and then was like kind of very similar things going on. Like I had no period. Um, I felt like total crap. I looked, quote, amazing, right? Like people were constantly telling me how good I looked and I'm an
Mm-hmm.
inspiration. And I'm like, well, guess what? I haven't had a
Uh-huh.
period in like a year and I feel like shit all the time.
Uh-huh.
I'm tired all the time. I'm cold all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and finally after that last show, I was like, I still want to have kids. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing to my body just
Mm-hmm.
to, yeah, like you said, it was uh, just like you had like your career around macros and recipes and all this influencer stuff that you were doing. Like my income was also in a way tied to how I looked. So that
Mm-hmm.
was an extra challenge. But yeah, I think if I had to pick like a light bulb moment, which I know this came up in the questions we were both asking, what people wanted to hear about. And I think my like light bulb moment was after that show. And I was like, wait, I want to have kids. When's the last time I had a cycle? Like, this is stupid. And decided I needed to just be done with that chapter because it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
going to work together and kind of made a plan to how to get out of that and start taking care of myself again. And then at this point, now I guess it's almost 4 years later, I never really went back to that dieting because I was pregnant and then breastfeeding and I was just hungry
Mm-hmm.
all the time. I couldn't imagine like restricting my calories during that time. And yeah, I just now I'm at a point where like I don't feel like I would ever go back to like religiously tracking or anything. Was there like a
Absolutely
light
not.
bulb moment for you, or was it just kind of that leaky gut coming up and not feeling good?
I think it's interesting. I think that the leaky gut moment and not feeling good and just being not, I think what it came down to was my Roman Empire was fitness. It was
Oh
all I
God,
thought
yeah.
about. And, you know, in hindsight, I kind of knew that was a beige flag, like that everything I did sort of had some like going out to eat. I was very careful about that. Taking my kids to a movie, I always planned like a protein bar and some tea. Like everything I did had something to do with nutrition. When was I going to get a workout in? If I had a big drive, or I was in the car 12 hours, I was going to do the 10,000 step challenge and find a way to get that in. Everything had to do with nutrition and fitness. And that just became more than I could handle, especially I have three daughters. So currently they are 10, 13, and 14. And they were called 3 years younger, probably when all this was, or maybe 4 years younger when I was really in it. And I think they were really the reason that I knew I had to change things, not because I didn't think I wasn't teaching them good habits, which we can get into that, but I think because I just wanted to spend more time with them. I remember, I think the light bulb moment, this just came to me, was when we were supposed to go up to my parents' lake house with the girls for the weekend, their favorite place to go. And I told my husband, I was like, you take them. I've got work to do at home. And my work was, that was just a very thinly veiled excuse to stay on track with my workouts and my food. And I knew in that moment what I had done. And that's still a moment where I was like, I cannot believe I gave up a full weekend with my three daughters at the lake when
Mm.
I barely see them now. They're so busy, they're constantly moving. I miss them even when they're with me because they're teenagers, and that's just what happens now. And so I think that did it. And that was what I needed, because at that point, the kind of self-care that you and I are talking about was radical. Like, it was not something that anyone was even talking about. And
Yeah.
it was just, and then knowing that you were shifting gears, it just made it was just so aligned, because I don't
Yeah.
think I would have done it if you weren't right there with me.
Hmm. Yeah. And I don't want to say like you need like a quote rock bottom to start shifting this, but you do need something deep within, because it's too easy, especially like you've mentioned with this age of social media, it's too easy to see the lean bodies, see the fitness gurus, see the boss babes in the gym with all their workouts and their
Mhm.
perfect athletic gear and their perfect smoothies. And now there's like detox stuff. And oh my God, it's way too easy to just get drawn back into like, oh, remember when I looked like that? Or
Yeah.
remember how much acknowledgement for me, like that was big. Like the external validation piece was like
Mhm.
definitely a huge challenge for me to work through, because nobody cares when you're doing like a reverse diet or you're like eating at maintenance. And you're right, it was kind of the start of that. I mean, like how it's more popular now to just take care
Yeah.
of your body. But I remember 2020, like people were just starting to talk about like reverse dieting, and that
Mhm.
was, people were understanding what that was. But prior to that, like nobody did that. It was just like diet and then, good luck, or like 30-day challenge and good luck.
Mhm.
So if because it's so not trendy to
Yeah.
just like take care of yourself, and that's not like a buzzword, you have to have something deep within that's going to keep you going.
Yes. And that was something that you found within yourself, I feel like, before I was able to.
Mm.
And I think that's what took me so long to get to where I am right now. I think a lot of people may be more in touch with their intuition, or I don't really know. I guess I shouldn't speak for anybody else, but it took me a long time to even find her, to reach her. And it wasn't until I really did a lot of work, thinking about myself as a small girl, that I was able to have the same kind of compassion for myself that I would have for my own children, or a friend. If what would it, and they always, what would you tell a friend is great advice, because you would obviously tell your friend to do the right thing, but almost everyone who's in this place that you and I are in, that doesn't apply to us. We can push ourselves harder. We know what we can take. We've got this. We've been through it. There's nothing that we haven't achieved just from putting hard work into it. And so suddenly, when this was before me, where what I had to achieve was finding a light within to guide me. I mean, and I realize that probably sounds very nebulous to a lot of people, but that's truly what helped me dismantle things. I had to look inward and literally ensconce myself in a world that was not related to anybody else or anything else. I think I told you that I stopped strength training for 6 solid months, and it wasn't. And in the beginning, like I didn't have a plan. I wasn't like, this is what I'm going to do and this is what I'm going to stick to. I was very chaotic in the beginning, because I didn't have that North Star. You were that for me, but you were very careful to say, you have to find it for yourself. You were the one who I would look to for, some guidance, or maybe an affirmation, or a way to reframe something. But it took a really long time for me to be able to source that from within. So I'm very
Hmm.
grateful for you
Mm,
and
that's
everything
so
that you
sweet.
shared. And your transitional time as a coach was such a beautiful thing. I don't think enough people got to experience that, because that is something that everybody needs, that I know is not your niche anymore, and that's fine. But that was enormously helpful in guiding me. So I'm really glad that you're able to talk about this on your platform, even though it's not exactly what you're doing now, because it was enormously helpful.
Oh, good. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Right. Right.
But yeah, gosh, and just to maybe paint a better picture for anyone who's listening who this is kind of like, I don't know if this is me, I mean, you probably
Mhm.
do, but like just to take you into the obsession. If you I feel like I'm speaking to at least like the woman who has done challenges in the past, has done this diet or that diet. I mean, gosh, maybe we should even list the diets that I've followed, because I've
Yeah.
done Whole 30s, I've done brief stints of trying to do keto. I haven't done carnivore. That might be like the only thing.
Same.
I did
Yeah.
RP back in the day, like those template diets. Oh my God. Macros were definitely what I was at the longest. And just
Hmm.
some people will argue that macros aren't a diet, like you're just being conscious of your food intake. And
Hmm.
I guess maybe if you're tracking your food like once a week to like just check on where your intake is at. But
Hmm.
I don't know if I've ever actually met anyone who that's all they do. Like it's so easy to make it an obsession.
Hmm.
And then it really is, like you said, it really is taking time from what's truly important in your life. Like, even if you're not at the physique that you want, if you are finding yourself pulled into this obsession again and again, especially if it's like that on again, off again relationship, like that's kind of who I want to speak to today, and
Hmm.
to help maybe you see this in a different way and like reconnect with a version of yourself that might feel like more fulfilling, joyful, happier in the long run.
Yes. And I realize, and I do want to be careful, because I understand that macros are, they are a diet. Let's be clear on that. First and foremost, they are. But I realize they've also helped a lot of people. And I think it's also important to mention, hopefully I don't forget my thought here, like everything that I'm speaking to, like I'm informed by my own experiences and my own, I should say, able-bodied, white privilege, relatively my own thinness. I've never been in a body that's obese in a way that it hinders me from doing things, or where doctors have told me that they won't treat me until I lose weight. I've never experienced those things. So I'm not saying that there's not tools out there that people who have to make harder choices shouldn't be accessing. So before I kind of go into what I'm going to say, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there, because I am sympathetic and compassionate to that
Yeah,
community as
thanks for
well.
saying that. Yeah.
But I think with macros, oh gosh, and of course I did just kind of lose my train of thought.
Obsession. That's what I was
Yes,
coming
it
through for
it
me.
it definitely gets a hold on you, and it's really hard to disassociate, because it becomes so easy and so ingrained in your head that it's almost impossible to let go. It's not just like, I'm not going to worry about it this week. It's like, oh no, I could easily track what I just had for breakfast in my head, because I've been doing it for so long. And so that takes work to kind of step away from that. And I will say that I did understand nutrition better after learning about macros. So it's not something that I would, tell people to run far, far away from. But this is what I was going to say. I too don't know anyone who has ever had a healthy relationship with macros long term. There's one coach in my mind. I don't want to put names out there, but she seems, and again, this is all Instagram, so you don't know what you don't know, but she seems like she's got a really healthy handle on teaching and training people how to use macros in a responsible way. But then what people go ahead and do with that information, nobody knows. And it's just very easy to get carried away. And macros, to me, the biggest problem is that they create a scarcity mindset. And I think this lack of abundance and this scarcity trickles into everything in life. And that, in my life anyway, and that led to the need for me to constantly feel like I needed to be in control and constantly get approval from other people. And that just branched out from macro tracking. And as soon as I was able to let go of feeling like everything that was important to me was scarce and there just was not enough to go around, that's when I started to kind of like release this hold, or I should say this obsession began to release its hold on me.
Yeah, I think macros, I totally agree with you. I mean, I'm grateful. I do think that part of the reason it's easy for me to just maintain this body weight that I'm at right now, and which I don't consider myself super lean, but I feel healthy, I feel good, um, is because of macros and
Mhm.
because of tracking for so long. It is a learning tool, but I think it's important for it to be temporary because it's also a very easy way to disguise an eating disorder or at
Mhm.
least disordered eating, which I mean, I'll just speak for myself. Like for sure that last bodybuilding prep that I did, all of my eating disorder habits came back out. I was binge eating occasionally. Like that was probably the big one for me. And in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, you were binge eating because
Mhm.
you were totally deprived. So
Yes.
you're going to crave sugar. I would get sugar from the grocery store, and like eat it on the way home because
Yeah.
like I didn't want to see it around. I didn't want anyone
Mhm.
to know. Um, like
That's such a good
bringing,
point. That what's
yeah.
wrong with me when actually it's what's right with you. Like your body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do when it's starving. These are the
Mhm.
behaviors that are triggered when it comes to scarcity, both mental and actual, as you were saying.
Yeah, like binge eating is a huge signal to you of like, hey, you are not feeding your body. You are depriving your body in some way, shape, or form,
Mhm.
and something's got to shift. Otherwise, that won't go away. And so yeah, macros long term, it's just way too easy. I even saw a reel recently on Instagram from someone who I know still does coach with macros. And like, ah, I think she had the best intentions. I'm sure she had the best intentions, but like it was all about like how to talk to someone else about macros if they're like, hey, you're getting obsessed with your food, and like how to respond. And it was all like, this is really important to me right now. And
Mhm.
some of it, I'm like, I get it. I get it. You do need to have those conversations with people in your life if you're working
Mhm.
towards a specific goal. But there also has to be times when you're just like, you're right. This is taking away from my life. How do I let go of this? How do I find some balance again? And maybe that person in your life who's telling you that has the best intentions and they see you kind of slipping into that
Mhm.
dangerous place.
I agree. And I think that's such a good example of one of the ways that diet culture shows up that's not so obvious. When you're saying, I'm doing this for my health. I'm doing this because, or
It
I'm doing
makes
this
me
because
feel good.
exactly.
Like, does it though?
The idea that health has to be aligned with being thinner or smaller, or I think there's some virtue signaling going on out there too when people are sharing all of these things that they're doing. Like if you somehow feel morally better because you hit your macros for the day. Not only like hit them, nailed them. Like I remember going to bed at night and being like, oh my god, I nailed it to the number today. Like how great am I? And I would like take a screenshot and share that. And it's like, so it is just everywhere. And I feel like the not so obvious times when people are relating to what they're doing to it's all for my health, it's all for my mental well-being, going to the gym is my therapy. I feel like that is diet culture just lurking. People don't realize it.
Totally. Uh-huh. Because what you do is you almost trap yourself in like, I have to go to the gym then. Because remember, it's my self-care. So I have
Hmm.
to go.
Exactly.
Even if your body, like I was just talking about this with Blue Moon on a podcast, like even if your body is telling you, like, no, I need a rest day, if you have told yourself over and over again, the gym is my personality, it's my savior, it's my self-care, you're probably going to force yourself to go. And that's
Hmm.
just going to kind of dig it deeper.
It is. And that's such a good point about how so many of us tie the way we look to our identity or how we present on social media. And so that transition is difficult too when your body starts to change or your messaging starts to change. And there's nothing I love more than when I find somebody that is shifting their beliefs and shifting their views. Those are the people I want to share space on Instagram with. Those are the people I want to see in my stories. Every now and then something from someone pops up in what I would call like my former life, which is again even just 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking they're still saying the same things. Like how I don't understand how you can't even evolve just a little bit. All the people I trust and love the most in the space have evolved in some way, shape, or form. And so to tie your
Yeah.
identity to like a certain look from a certain time in life, our bodies are meant to change. Like God willing, our bodies change. God willing, we're able to grow old and age and have new experiences. And we need to make space and normalize that and celebrate it. I wish that happened
Hmm.
more. But people are really
Hmm.
afraid. There's fear. There's a big fear, I think. We live in a very fat phobic world. And I think a lot of people also fear losing what they would call their identity by gaining weight.
Let's get into that because I think that was a common question too that we got was
Yeah.
like, what were some of the challenges or how did you overcome fear? Which I feel like those go hand in hand.
Hmm.
And I think the big first one that comes to mind is weight gain. So just to speak on a couple things that I did to help with that, because gosh, I'm at least on average 20 to 30 pounds heavier than I was like at my leanest when I was doing bodybuilding. So I mean that's a good amount of weight, but it's very
Hmm.
healthy weight in my
Hmm.
opinion, and I
Sure is.
definitely don't want to get rid of it.
Absolutely
But
not.
that's a lot of weight gain. So things that I did.
I mean,
By
I would challenge you on it being a lot of weight gain, especially when
You're
you
right.
consider when you know,
You're right. I shouldn't say it like that. I guess it just sounds like a big number. If someone's like, oh, I
it
gained 20 pounds, but like if you look at me and you know me,
yeah.
that's very, it was necessary. It was
And it only
necessary,
sounds like
healthy
a
weight
big
gain.
number. Why does it sound like a big number? Is it a big
Yeah,
number? I think I mean, we were both in the macro coaching space for a little while. We both know that on any given day, the scale can fluctuate like 7 or 8 pounds. That's not a
true,
weird thing. So I
true.
think too, I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with the scale anymore because I got rid of it,
No,
but
yeah, no.
I really had to let go of the numbers too, because I think when a doctor got me on a scale, I think I was up like, oh gosh, I think it was like 45 pounds, maybe. It could have been closer to 50. I'm not even sure. And that wrecked me for a while. Like that was a setback for me. So, and the only reason I'm sharing that number, I don't necessarily like sharing numbers, but I want people to understand that I gained more weight in what I would call this quote unquote recovery than I did during a couple of my pregnancies. That's how much I shifted in this, and how much I had to just take deep breaths through it all. So I'm sorry, I cut you off when you
No,
were saying something.
seriously, thank you for calling me out because that's like a really good reminder. And it shows like what thoughts are still deep inside that
It's
maybe
true.
I still need extra love and healing on some of this for sure.
Same.
Mhm.
I wanted to make sure we did touch on that because a lot of people I have said like, "Are you there? Did you do it?" And hell no, hell no. This is a
Yeah.
journey. We're still in it.
Hmm.
It's all good.
Yeah. Yeah. And also like that's a good point to emphasize. Like I do kind of like that we're throwing numbers out there because someone might be listening who's been stuck in that macro obsession for a while and they think they can put on 5 pounds and just everything's going to be peachy and perfect. And that's not what we're talking about here.
Not at
You
all.
know, especially if like you don't have a cycle, it might be 20, 30 pounds plus. It
Yes.
might be way more. It might be twice that. It might be half of it. Everyone
Yeah.
is so different. But it's important to know that like we're not talking about like a simple scale fluctuation. Like these
Yeah.
are big changes.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yes, I'm glad we took time to mention that because I do agree that a lot of people would assume that they can do it quickly, briefly, with minimal disruption, and it has to be disruptive. It has to be. That's the
It
only
has
way
to
to get
be.
through the other side. It has to be
Hmm.
uncomfortable and it has to be disruptive. And if it's not those two things, you're probably doing yourself a disservice and dragging the whole process out.
Totally. Yep. So let's talk about things that helped with that process because it is uncomfortable, like you just said. Things that helped me, freaking just buying the bigger clothes, like
Yes.
buy the size that is going to be comfortable. Cause guess what? You're also going to look better in it, which a lot of people
Hmm.
don't realize. Like I remember going like this small to medium or whatever. And I'm like, I don't want to be a medium, but
Yeah.
like I look so much better in a
Yes.
medium, you know, and it's more comfortable. So that was a
Absolutely.
big one for me. This one is still challenging, but like I want to like stop wearing crop tops, which I find it hard to find full length tank
Yes.
tops for like can someone make some
I
nice full
mean,
length tank tops because I just don't want to wear crop tops. I don't even want to.
I know.
Like I don't need
But
to show
they're
my
everywhere.
midriff.
You're right. I mean, at least we're
Yeah.
not are low rise jeans coming back? Because if those could never come back again, that
No.
would be fine. It's okay. Jeans are silly. I don't even wear jeans. I
I
don't
don't
know why I
even
even
wear
said
jeans.
jeans.
Yeah.
That's a terrible
Yeah.
example. But you're right. Clothes that feel good on your body,
Clothes
clothes
that
that are
feel good.
soft. Absolutely.
Yep. I'm big on like dresses and skirts now, like full length. It just, I feel more feminine. I feel
Mhm.
better. When you feel better, you look better. Like it all goes hand in hand. Oh, and then have this one was huge for me, have some sort of body positive practice. For me, that's when I started pole dancing, which
Oh
I
yeah.
never really got back to that after having my daughter, but
Oh,
for
you
like,
should. You were so good.
oh, thank you.
I
And it
loved
was
your pole
just
dancing
like,
stories.
it was so fun. It was so
Oh,
connecting to like my sexy self.
yes.
There were so many shapes and sizes in the classes I would go to. It was so much like, you know, connecting with yourself in the mirror and like dancing for yourself. And yeah, it felt really good. It felt
Mhm.
so good. Like dance was really helpful for me in this time when I was going from crazy shredded to like the body I have now, and
Mhm.
just being like, this is, I can still move. I can still feel sexy. I can still feel fun and free.
Mhm.
So having some sort of practice that helps you feel that way, that helps you see yourself as evolving and beautiful and
Mhm.
feminine was a big one for me. I think it's so important, and you might have to try a couple different things to figure out what that's going to be. But yeah,
Mhm.
those were like the main things that helped me get through the uncomfortable moments
Mhm.
and the fear of like the weight gain. What about you?
I'm glad you touched on the feminine because I didn't even really understand that there was such a thing as a feminine and a masculine energy, especially in the context of this. And a lot of the doing and the forcing and the controlling, that's a lot of the masculine energy. And I
Yes.
lived in that for my life, my
Yes.
entire and I was grateful for it. It got me a lot of things in life that I really feel a lot of gratitude for. However, I didn't even think that the idea of softness and surrender and compassion and
Intuition.
self-love, intuition, all of that, I had to literally learn a new vocabulary and then learn how to do those things for myself. I felt like I was a great mom. I hug my kids. I'm
You
very
are a great
compassionate.
mom. Yes.
I think so. It's like I understand the feminine energy outwardly, but not for myself. I just had no ability to apply it to myself. And so that really sinking my teeth into that as a project helped me because I did have to let go of a lot of what I did in the kitchen, a lot of what I did in the gym. And I had in doing that, I had a ton of time on my hands, and so I decided to take up meditation and yoga, and it was a practice I wanted to do both things every single day, and so I did that for 6 months. I woke up and did meditation and yoga every day. That was all that mattered, and sometimes it was 5 minutes of each, and that was all. And that was okay. I just needed to make space for something that allowed solitude and quiet because there was none of that. I wouldn't let any of that into my life. I needed the noise and I wanted it because it kept me distracted from, and again, this, I feel like this is a lot of therapy here, but it's what I needed. But I was distracted from a lot of the pain that I had inside that I just wasn't good enough for anything or without really controlling myself, I would never be accepted or loved. And unfortunately, all of my experiences validated that. It felt like fact. And so I sort of went inward. And it was a little bit of a dark time because I didn't feel like I had as much connection to people because I was not as confident. And that was, and so that just, I know we're talking about things that helped. I'm sort of talking about the experience I had, but understanding how to treat my body well took research and practice. And so a lot of my time went to that. So that was helpful in terms of shifting what I did with my days because that changed a lot. And then I just focused on my family. They were the most important thing to me, and they were what I had abandoned most besides myself. I had really not paid nearly as much attention to them as I wish I would have, especially during the COVID years when they were all home. And like I think I took it for granted because we were home all the time. I could be in the gym for 2 hours. The girls were just upstairs. If they needed something, they could tap me. And so I did everything I could to get involved with their schools, with their, with having friends over. My husband and I really decided that we wanted to create a home where kids would want to come to. And so I always tried to host parties. I tried to bake for kids. I tried to volunteer for events at school. I wanted to immerse myself in what was most important to me. And that was my kids' lives. And then, trying to be a better wife. Because I will say too, this, some people will think this is TMI, but when I was really lean, like I had no libido. Like I was
Oh,
exhausted.
same,
There was no
same.
sexy in my world when I
No,
was real tiny. Didn't exist.
nope.
So, but I mean, I think too, I also had to remind myself that I was doing this hard thing. Like, by the way, this is part of the human experience. Like, we are meant to do hard things and be uncomfortable, but like, I wasn't even just doing it for myself. I was doing it for my children's mother. I was doing it for my husband's wife. I was doing it for my mother's daughter. And I felt like that led into a lot of generational healing that I also realized that I needed to do in the process of, dismantling a lot of diet culture beliefs.
Yeah, that's such a great reminder to all those words you said about the feminine. I just like, ooh, it feels so good because I don't think I realized until at least a year or two after my journey started was how the nutrition space, especially like what I was trained in and all like my certificates and stuff, was
Mhm.
an incredibly masculine
Yeah.
lens and a lot of actually shit. I think I only learned from men. Were like all of
That's
my mentors
interesting.
and like running my certification courses and stuff,
Mm.
except for I took a Stacy Sims course at one point. But besides her, yeah, it was like all men. And so it is very like logic. You just do it, you put
Mhm.
your head down, you push through. And so a huge part of this is when people are like, well, but I don't know what to eat.
Mhm.
That's because you're totally disconnected from your feminine energy, which is
Yeah.
your intuitive side, which is looking inwards instead of outwards. So anything, yeah, along these lines of like practices, I would recommend just anything that like slows you down and
Mm.
gives you space to reconnect to the feminine. And I feel like you said this at one point too, that like you started wearing more dresses and skirts and
Yes.
stuff.
I changed a lot about I had to do the
Yeah.
same thing as you. All of my clothing became way too tight and very uncomfortable. And when I was changing sizes, I went to, where did I shop? I shopped at Aerie because they had a
Mm,
lot of really soft clothing and it was just very comfortable. So that was one store I'd recommend. And I did a little bit of stuff on Amazon, but I didn't, I mean, I don't know if Aerie's considered fast fashion or not, but I tried not to do much on Amazon there. Listen, you do what you can do when you're in this.
totally.
So I would never tell someone to not buy something from a certain place. But I think there was like a boho. I had like I went through a period of like I was listening to Fleetwood Mac and I was buying all sorts of like flowy long like dusters, and I was just, I mean, it didn't really catch, but I needed that to just really remind me of the womanly side that does exist in me. And it didn't always have to be like sneakers and leggings and a tight sports bra and a crop top to make it like that didn't have to be what was cute.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think at this time, witchy things were really drawing to me too. Like
Yes,
time
same.
in sisterhood, oracle cards, sitting with cacao and quiet,
Mhm.
lots of candles, like
Mhm.
it can be like silly little fun things. This,
Mhm.
uh, this, this is a hard journey, I think that you and I both went through, but you can make it fun in little
Yes.
ways too. Like it's going to be challenging, but have fun with it. Like do stuff.
Yeah.
The more you are just doing stuff that makes you feel good,
Yes.
it will get a little bit easier.
And
Yeah.
it's hard up front. It was really hard for me in the beginning to find things that really sparked joy outside of making meals and being in the gym because that was all I knew and that's what I thought I loved. And I think what I loved was the nurturing component of making a meal for someone. Like there's nothing I love more than cooking or baking for somebody. So I had just taken it and applied it in a masculine way. And as far as being in the gym, I still, and candidly, I do still struggle a little bit with a transactional relationship to being in the gym. I have a hard time not doing something active every day, and I'm sure a lot of people would argue that that's really good. You should do something active every day, but being okay with a couple days in a row, like the 2 days I'm having this weekend, where I'm in the car or I'm at a desk and I just don't have the opportunity to do anything. And at the end of the day, instead of doing like a 30-minute hit workout on the Peloton, just picking up my book and like thanking my body for everything it got me through and all the stress that I've been enduring for things that are not gym related. And so just opening my mind to the fact that there are other things that will be gratifying in time. It wasn't easy. It was really hard for me up front, but eventually I started to realize that I did love these things. I just wanted to apply them in a way that was more compassionate for myself. And
Mhm.
that took time.
It's great to move your body every day as long as when your body's asking for rest, you listen to
Mhm.
that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yes.
not on and off. It's not black and white.
And
Yeah.
it's okay if and reminding myself right now, today, even, my body isn't necessarily asking for rest, but what my life has put in front of me these last 48 hours is requiring it. It's requiring me to move my energy elsewhere, which I think brings up an interesting thought about moderation and like, does it exist? Can you do it all? Can you balance it all? And I think there are times, like both seasons and then, shorter periods of weeks and months and days, where you have to focus on one thing. And so
Mhm.
I've not been good at moderation these last couple days, but that's okay. My our bodies are going to recover just fine if we have a couple days of not living optimally. It's going to be fine. And again, that's a lot of the diet culture dismantling that I've had to work on and remind myself that it's okay to not live in moderation all the time.
Yeah. And in terms of food, for me, when you say that, I think of like ice cream or sugar,
Right.
because that was always what I was binge eating, was like
Hmm.
sugar, sweet foods, obviously, because they're super calorie dense. Your body's
Yeah.
getting a ton of calories. Um, there was definitely a point where like I could not have anything sweet in my house,
Hmm.
nothing. And now, like, I just opened the freezer last night and I was like, oh, I have ice cream in here. Like, I don't even know when I bought this,
Surprise.
but like,
Right.
and I don't even think about it. But that
Hmm.
probably took, I would say, like about a solid year for me of allowing myself to eat what I wanted when I wanted it. And
Hmm.
not necessarily like Stephanie Buttermore all in style, which if anyone is interested, like she did an all in journey. And I think it was really cool to see on YouTube, Stephanie Buttermore. I didn't do that. That didn't feel right to me, but
Hmm.
I did spend like a year basically just kind of letting myself eat what I want. If I'm
Hmm.
craving ice cream, I'm going to eat that. If I want to make cookies, I'm going to eat that. But
And did you
also,
feel like you overate those things during that time?
probably, yeah, yeah, for a while,
Mhm.
not always,
Yeah.
but for a while. And what's funny is that, like, at least for me, I think I had to go through that to get to a place where it wasn't scarce anymore.
Hmm.
And that my calories were high enough that is sort
Yes.
of slowed down, because for a while you probably will just crave sugar because your body has been deprived. Like in my case, I was dieting in some way, shape, or form from like 2015 to 2020,
Yeah.
so through 2020, like
Yeah.
until 2021. So it took a while for my body to be
Yes.
like, oh wait, we're not going to be in scarcity anymore. And
Hmm.
slowly, like my meals would get bigger. Like I was eating more whole foods too.
Hmm.
Um, but like there definitely was that period,
Hmm.
a long time. And now I'm at a place where like, yeah, I will totally forget if I have ice cream in the freezer or
Yes.
something. But if I want it, I will have it. So I didn't, gosh, if you would have asked me like 3 or 4 years ago if I thought that moderation like that could exist, I probably would say no.
Yeah.
But like it really does. It really does exist. I feel like a man now, like men just like
Yes.
most men just like
Mhm.
don't think about this stuff, and like they just eat what they want when they want.
Yeah.
And I used to be so envious of that, like with my husband, and now I'm
Yes.
just, that is also how I eat. I'm
Do
very
you
aware of like eating whole foods, but that's it.
There's someone, I don't remember who it is, who talks about either being a moderator or an abstainer, and I always
Mm,
thought, I'm an abstainer. I'm the one who has to just get it out, have none, because if I have a bite, I'm gonna have it all. And I
yeah.
can see now that that was the result of not being well fed in when it comes to food. When we're talking about moderation with food, that came to not being well fed. And so mentally and physically, I was always hungry. And I use that term literally and figuratively. I just always wanted more of whatever it was that I had in front of me. And so you're right. That took a long time of not just feeding, but overfeeding. I had to overfeed.
Right. Yes.
And that, I think, is the part that really, a lot of people are like, all right, I'm out when they hear that, because it does require weight gain. And it's
And
not.
not just weight gain, but fat gain.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's
Yeah.
be clear, not
Mm-hmm.
just weight gain, but fat gain. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's not punishment. Like, it's the process. It's how we get through it. You can't go around it. And it's just like anything else you've ever had to work for. It's going to be hard and uncomfortable in it. I think this feels different to people because they think they're being judged in some way as they're doing it. And I'm here to tell you, you're probably being judged by yourself and nobody else. I think most
Mm-hmm.
people are, happy when they see someone who is well fed and who is comfortable and able to enjoy a meal. I'm 100% sure I lost a lot of friends when I wouldn't go out to dinner and I wouldn't be social and I didn't want to take the time to or the energy to have a meal out when I could just have my own food at home. That's to me is a sad story in my past, and it's not one that I want to ever pass on to my daughters. And so my hope is that, with the idea of abundance and being well fed, we have, and I will say this confidently, we have junk in our house, but it's mostly eaten by other kids. And that I shouldn't, and I'm not saying that with pride at all. I mean, maybe I should be more careful about it. But one of the reasons I even started baking and sharing it on a broader scale is because my family is over it. Like we have stuff in our house all the time, and it just sits there and it gets thrown away. And that's because I had to do things, either buy things or overeat things for so
Mhm.
long that now we're all at a point where we just look at it and we're like, what are we going to do with this? Mom loves baking, whatever it is, but we gotta put it somewhere because otherwise it's just a sort of a waste of food, and we don't like to do that either. So
Yeah.
it's a process, agreed,
Uh-huh.
a hard one.
Uh-huh.
That's the hardest part for me, was acknowledging that I'm in this. And I actually I want to ask you this. I felt like am I ever going to stop gaining weight? Is this ever going to end? Because it went
Mm.
on for a long time for me. Did you ever have that feeling? Like, when is this feeling going to end?
Yeah, and gosh, my timeline, I guess, is kind of weird because I was so focused. I think I stopped caring about fat loss because I was so focused on like wanting to get pregnant. And
Mm,
so I was like not caring about that as much because I kind of like hoped it would
hmm.
just turn into a pregnancy and then like gain pregnancy weight.
Yeah.
And which
Did
that
it,
did
did,
kind of
did it,
happen, I
was the
guess.
timing like, is that what happened? Was it
Yeah,
timing?
because well, then I got pregnant summer of 2022. So there was like a 2 year period in there.
Hmm.
But I mean, that did kind of happen, I guess,
Yeah.
because you know what I think happened first is like the scale would go up. I bought the bigger clothes, but I was doing so much different kinds of workouts that were fun
Hmm.
instead of more or less torturing myself, like
Yeah.
trying to push myself too hard. I was doing more dance and stuff like that. So it just like, oh, that's another huge thing that just naturally happens. If you are crazy into diet culture and crazy into the gym, when you take your foot off the gas in the gym, you are not going to be as hungry too. So
Mm,
like your body starts to naturally balance that. And I think that's what started happening to me. I would be like, well, I'm starving all the time, so I'm just going to eat for forever, right? But
yes.
no, because like I stopped working out for 5+ hours every week. I
Yep.
started moving in ways that actually felt good to my body instead of
Uh-huh.
like punishing myself or pushing myself crazy hard. So
Yeah.
then my appetite went down. And like
Mhm.
that does, again, this happened like super slowly over months and months and months. But like when I noticed that starting to happen, that like kicked me into another level of trust
Mhm.
because it was kind of reassuring to see, oh, I'm not going to just eat forever. I'm not just going to gain weight for forever because the more that I listen to my body, she is actually telling me what she
Yes.
needs and she's not going to just lead me astray.
Yes. It's amazing how our bodies are able to respond. And I think there are so many people out there, especially in the when we were in that period when everybody was reverse dieting, and it was such a precise number, right? It was like you go up exactly 100 calories and this many carbs, and it's
Mhm.
like your body is elastic. Your metabolism is elastic, and it's going to move with you. It's not going to give everything. As we've mentioned, we've obviously gained weight, but when you start eating less and moving less, your metabolism isn't just going to drop suddenly. It's not. It really does align with what works for your body and where you are meant to be. And I think that's an
Mhm.
important thing to mention too, is that we are all not meant to be shaped exactly the same. If you and I were sitting here and doing the exact same workout regimen and eating the exact same meals, we would still look different. And
Totally.
I think that we as a culture are misled by diet plans and macro tracking and reverse diets that no, it happened for my coach. It's supposed to happen the same way for me. How am I somehow failing? I need to get harder on myself. I need to dig my heels in deeper. When if we can just trust our bodies, that our here's the thing: you eat carbs, your body knows exactly what to do with those carbs. Like,
Mhm.
trust that it does, and it's going to
Mhm.
be okay. And eventually you're going to get to the point where you're not even thinking about it anymore, and not even thinking about what's going to happen with any surplus that you have. And from there, not even the food noise. I hear people talking about food noise is gone for me. I don't think about it to the point
No.
that I have to remind myself, did I even eat lunch today sometimes?
Ugh, yeah.
And that's something I'm working on, because I don't want to fall into that trap either. It could be easy to do that, but
Yeah. Yeah, I
without
really,
it,
the only food things I think about now are like, am I cooking a protein and a veggie? Like, it's pretty easy
yeah,
for me to get carbs in. So
yeah.
like, am I having some veggies today? Am I having protein with every meal? Okay, good
Hmm.
enough. That's like
Hmm.
about it for me.
And is that how you're doing it with Jane too, with your
Yeah,
daughter?
yeah, maybe we should talk about daughters now because that I just try to have her eat what I eat.
Yep.
So for her, I'm actually more thinking about fats.
Oh yeah.
Um, because I just, well, gosh, that's funny. I was just about to say I don't eat that many fats, but like, yeah, 4 years ago, me would be like, I would never eat as much fat. But I guess that's just another thing I don't really think about. But with her meals, I try to be like, okay, let's
Mhm.
make sure you're getting enough fats in. She'll eat like a whole avocado some meals, which is funny because
Beautiful.
yeah, definitely would never used to like quote let myself eat a whole avocado because of like the
Right.
fats or whatever. But now I'm like, oh look, she ate a whole one. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
good for her.
But yeah, honestly, with her meals too, I just try to we're we are a pretty low sugar house now, just like I
Mhm.
don't know, naturally it just
Naturally.
kind of happened.
Mhm.
I really like dark chocolate, and yeah, I like ice cream or cookies or something once in a while, but that's kind of it. So
Mhm.
I do try to be really mindful of like how much sugar Jane is eating.
Yeah.
She's 16 months for anyone listening, so like I have total control of her food. She loves fruit, but like we really try to just do natural sugars, and then I'm really trying to think about, is she getting protein and fats in and veggies just to get like used to the taste?
Yeah.
And that's, I mean,
And
I
you
feel
made
like
her
it's pretty
food, like,
simple.
you have made her food for a long time too. So
Right.
that's
Yeah,
really nice.
I love cooking too. Yeah, like just like you were talking about. I mean, I try to really find joy in it. I try to do things that I like in the kitchen.
The
Super into
sourdough, your
sourdough
sourdough.
lately.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, yes.
It's
And she
gorgeous.
loves the sourdough. Oh my gosh. So that's really fun. Like
Yeah.
slathering up a bunch of butter or like making her avocado toast or something, and she just loves it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it really can be that simple. I feel like, I
Mhm.
don't know, your daughters are obviously much older and probably at a trickier time, but
They are much older, but they are also very aware of protein and carbs and fiber and fat. They understand nutritional breakdown in food, probably because I've spoken about it for a long time, but I'm very fortunate in that they definitely don't obsess over it, but they have an awareness surrounding it.
so
Um,
how did you do that? How did like you teach them without it being, like don't eat that because of how much carb it has or whatever?
there was never a "don't eat that" comment ever that has ever once
Okay.
come out of my mouth.
Which,
If
yeah, obviously.
so, right, but no, but I think there's a lot of, I think that exists out there.
I
So I
think
don't
it
think
exists,
it's
but not from you.
strange.
Yeah.
But no, I was always very aware to never, because I knew the way I was raised, and I was in a very low sugar household as well, except there was the don't eat that component. There was there
Okay.
so and then so I would go to friends' houses, and I would just I was binging as a small child because my parents just wouldn't let me us have Doritos in the house. It was like there was no sugar, there were no condiments, like, it was just, like, very, very plain food, and it was, I know my mom had the best of intentions, but I just felt, like I didn't have an expanse. I just didn't have options, and so when they were presented to me, I didn't know how to handle them. So I wanted to make sure my kids always had access to what they wanted to try, so they never felt like things were scarce. So, for instance, at 4 o'clock, a lot of times, one of my girls would be like, can I have some goldfish? And because kids, I don't train my kids to ask me if they can eat, but kids always ask you if you can eat as a parent. At least that's my experience. So I'm gonna put that out there first. It's not like they need permission to eat something, but usually they say, "Can I have something?" And if it's right around dinner time, I'll be like, can we just put some in a bowl and have them with dinner? And if they say, no, I'm really hungry, I want some now, be like, all right, can I cut up an apple for you to have with your goldfish? Fully realizing that those are two carb sources. But I like the idea of adding something with a little bit more nutritional content to something that they're already eating, and they'll enjoy both. or if they, so I try not to give them a lot of single snacks unless we're in a pinch. I like them to kind of make a mini plate instead of just like eating a bag of chips or having something. I feel like it's more satisfying. For me, in my experience, one of the things that has made this so much easier is trying to really find meals that have been satisfying. And just eating goldfish, I don't think is nearly as satisfying as having it with something else. So
Hmm.
that's always the goal when it comes to snacking, is to add something to it. But they know full well, especially my oldest daughters right now are in sports and they're coming home exhausted, and they know to look for protein and carbs. And so they'll go for like a Fairlife milk, like chocolate milkshake, and sometimes the carbs might not always be all that healthy, pretzels even, but they understand that they need to kind of refuel their body after they've done a lot of work. So that came from us always having protein, carbs, and fat on our plates at the dinner table. It was just how it's modeling behavior, I think. And now they choose what those things are more than I do.
Do you remember? Because I'm more thinking about like, what am I going to do in the like 4 to 8 age
Okay.
range of, since we don't really, I don't, I don't really want to have like, Oreos and stuff always on
Yeah.
hand, but I also don't want her to feel restricted and like go to a
Sure.
kid's birthday party and feel like obviously she can have the birthday cake or whatever, but I don't know how I'm going to like do that, with it. Like, I don't want it to seem off limits, but
Hmm.
also like we don't really eat that at home.
Hmm.
Did you ever have to navigate that? Were you like, one thing I've thought about doing is trying to talk to her about it and be like, well, how do
Hmm.
you feel after having that
Hmm.
birthday cake at that party? And like getting her to notice how her body
Yeah.
responds to like a big dose of sugar like that.
Uh-huh.
But Archie sometimes is like, that's not going to work.
Kids are funny. Also, kids are like resilient to things in ways that we aren't necessarily. And
True.
so like they're like, I'm fine. I just want to go run around the house 100 times. Like, but I'm
Yeah.
good. Like that's
Yeah.
that's gonna be their my kid's response anyway to a question like that. Um, I think so. I never wanted to hold anything back because of my own personal experience. And I know that sometimes we overcorrect when we do that. So
I know.
I will
Yeah.
admit that I have more in the house than I feel like is probably healthy, but it has led us to a place where we're kind of like, take it or leave it.
Where their mindset is healthy.
Their
Yeah.
minds, exactly. I think that's what it is. Their mindset is healthy. My girls, they really do. I don't want to say they love their bodies, but I've never heard a negative word come out of their mouths about their
Ooh,
bodies.
I love that.
And I feel it like they wear crop tops. They I think they're confident. You never really know, because also I don't want to like pick in their brains either about things. I don't want them to think it's something that I'm really obsessing over. But like I'm not that mom who's like, put a jacket on. I'm like, I see them walk out the door. I'm like, good for you guys. I love that you love yourself enough to be comfortable in the fashion choices that you're making and the food choices that you're making, and you're not second guessing it. And I think my hope is that this generation of kids is growing up with a different set of guidance guidelines than we were. I'm optimistic that that's the case, because I don't see a lot of eating disordered behavior in my girls. Now they're not in high school yet. My oldest is going to be a freshman, so that may change, but they're in a very sports heavy part of their lives. And so fueling their bodies is a topic of conversation that they hear all the time. It's often, are you eating enough? Not, oh, maybe you should have the salad instead of, the pizza.
Yeah.
So I honestly think that's probably more relevant than what you have in your house. Probably matters less than the conversation around those things
Like what
does.
vocab you're using, kind of.
Exactly. And if
Yeah.
she and if it's my daughter and she's like, Mom, I really want to try Oreos, you can buy a 2 pack of Oreos from a vending machine.
Yeah.
Like, cool, let's try them.
So maybe
Chances are,
it's, yeah. I was just
like,
gonna
let her
say,
get it in and out of her system. Let her try it,
mhm.
see what she thinks. Let her make her own judgment call. She may be like, you know what, I'd rather have a piece of your sourdough bread and avocado, because that's what
Yeah.
she's used to.
Yeah. And maybe I'll do like that. I've heard other people recommend like that adding technique. So like maybe
Hmm.
if she wants to try that at the grocery store, we get the pack of Oreos
Yeah.
and then I give it to her with, at that point, I'm sure she's old enough to eat like carrots or whatever. Like be like,
Yes,
yeah, and we're gonna have a veggie with it. Like go for it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And to me, I know that there are probably some people out there that would say, That's diet culture. Just like people are going to say like cottage cheese or egg whites. Like there's a big spectrum for what diet culture
Yeah.
is. And I'm not on board with extremes anymore. I've let go of like the extremes on anything out there. I'm
Hmm.
firmly in the middle. I'm someone who feels like I don't need to control my portion size of my cake. And also I can have egg whites for breakfast because I enjoy them and I
If you
want a
want it. Yeah.
direct
Yeah.
protein source. So that's where I live today. But I do recognize that not everybody would would think that it's a good idea to tell your kid that they have to have, veggie with a treat. But I'm someone who's always going to encourage that because I feel like it's important to have variety.
Well, and if they're like hungry, it's easy, even like me as an adult, it's easy
Yeah.
for me to be like, I'm so hungry, like I just need to eat
Yeah.
that sugar because like it's quick or whatever. Like kids are probably like that too, right? They might actually be
Absolutely.
hungry. They think
Mm-hmm.
they want Oreos, but they need like some real calories too. They probably
Yes.
also need food.
And chances are your kid's intuition is way stronger than yours if
Yeah,
you're you and me at this point, and their bodies are
true.
going to tell them what they need, and they're
Yeah,
probably much better at stopping when they're full. I know my kids. My kids
totally.
never finish a plate of anything anywhere, and I'm thrilled about
That's
that.
kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're definitely not doing like the clean plate club or anything
Yeah.
like that. No, no. You just tell me when you're done and we can be
Yeah.
done. Yeah.
And that
Hmm.
I think those are the things that naturally lead to dissipating worries about, oh my gosh, what if she can't stop eating the Oreos? I don't think she's
It's
living in an
probably not even a
environment where that would
thing.
happen. Yeah. I
Yeah.
truly don't think it's ever going to be a thing because of all of the other things, all of the other conversations that you have.
Hmm. Yeah. And maybe it's honestly just going to be like a tiny drop in the bucket because
Mhm.
if she's eating what I'm eating the rest of the day,
Yeah.
it's seriously not a big deal. And I maybe don't even have to think about it.
I
Yeah.
think I'm realizing too that so many of the issues I thought I was going to have as a parent just don't exist anymore. Like they just, there's new things. So don't get me wrong. It's not like, oh, parenting, it's so easy, but it's the things that I thought were going to be concerns just have taken care of themselves. And,
True.
new things crop up, of course, but luckily diet culture hasn't touched my kids the way it touched
That's
me.
amazing.
Yeah,
Mm,
I
yay.
know. It's good news.
Good. What about gosh, should we go into rapid fire or were there any other
Yeah, let's do rapid
challenges you
fire.
wanted to talk about?
No,
Like
I
or
think
fears or things that came up? Do you think we
no, I
got it?
think we touched on a lot of the depths.
Cool. Oh, one other thing that just came up for me on that. Um, we talked about, like having this big internal drive or finding that for yourself if this is a shift you want to make. And I think that's important so that there's not like this zombie version of you, like
Yeah.
constantly trying to come back. Like that's why I rebranded my podcast when I restarted it earlier this year was because I'm like, no, like we're not going to hang on to that anymore. Like it's going to go
Yeah.
bye-bye. And like now this is the focus. But one thing that I've heard people that I've worked with in like the plant medicine space talk about, not like an ego death or like killing a past version of yourself, but thinking of it as you can give her a proper ceremony
Yeah.
to like say goodbye if that's
And
helpful
thank
for some
you.
people and thank you and
Mhm.
like sending her off with love and gratitude. And I think you
Mhm.
and I both did like fire practices along the way,
Yes.
which I think are super helpful, like writing a letter to a past version of yourself and burning
Mhm.
it, maybe doing something like with a bonfire and a prayer.
Mhm.
um
Full moons, new
yes, working with a
moons.
full moon and new
Yeah.
moon, that can be like really helpful, I think, to have
Mhm.
something that is like marking I'm thankful for this past version of myself, but it's time
Mhm.
to say goodbye to her. Because if you let that kind of zombie version just like creep back in, which thoughts will creep back in, but if you
Mhm.
can be clear on like that's a past version of myself and I'm
Yes.
stepping into this new version, I think that's really helpful to be in the long-term mindset.
I agree. That I had to do a lot of that work to find the self-compassion that
Mm,
I eventually was able to tap into for myself. It was
yes.
understanding that that version of myself existed for a reason. She was there because of something, and I had to acknowledge that, thank her for her protection and how she helped me,
Yeah.
and let her know that I'm okay now. I can do this, um, and she's still going to be safe because I'm going to be good. I got this.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah. So just want to throw that out there too.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Cool. Let's see if we can do rapid fire, which is probably
Okay.
not going to be rapid, but whatever.
We'll do our best.
Um, Okay, actually, we kind of got some of these. Well, one person asked, how do you back away from tracking and start to ignore your macros? And she mentioned ice cream.
Mhm.
Um, because this is kind of funny, like reflecting on our conversation, we are not going into any like science or anything analytical, or this is a very like feminine focused conversation, which I think
Mhm.
really benefited you and I. And
Yes.
you can always find someone on like YouTube or whatever, who, if you want to go into the science of reverse dieting, or like I said, Stephanie Buttermore All In, she even has some science on her stuff,
Mhm.
but that's not really our focus. So I'm kind of thinking of this more as like a, how do you start backing away and start ignoring macros from like what worked for us? Do you have anything
Mhm.
that comes to mind for that?
It wasn't until I completely stopped. There was no backing away. The backing away wasn't successful. That just one foot in, one foot out just kept me pretty well planted where I was. And it was the worst of every world because I was still feeling like shit for every, like mentally, physically. Once I just dropped macros, at least that wasn't a concern anymore. And I had a mantra that I would say to myself all the time. And it was, let me think of it. I said it every day. Let the weight of the weight go. And
Mm.
I sat with that and what that meant because so often it was just the mental weight that was weighing me down, the mental weight about the physical weight. And I was like, if I can just let the weight of the weight go today for an hour, for 5 minutes, until this evening, I can focus on other things. And so I would grant myself the permission to do that. And so that particular mantra helped me. That might not speak to everybody, but for me, I think the point is I had to drop it and I had to drop it like a hot potato because before that, it was just a waste of time. What about
Hmm.
you?
I don't know. I think there's only in all the diets I did over the years, like actual cut phases that were, 3+ months. I think like once I followed a true reverse
Did you?
diet. Like, because I was always so hungry. I was
Yeah.
always so hungry. So
It's
like
still a
reverse,
diet. People
yeah,
forget, like, you're still in a deficit.
it just like never really worked for me. And that's like definitely not good for your body to have like those weight swings over and over and over
Yeah.
time. I think that's actually really bad for your heart too.
Mhm.
Um, it's definitely not good for your physique to like try to live life like that, of just like you said, like the in again, out again.
That is such a good point,
Um,
by the way, for everybody who's like, "I'm doing this for my health." Well, how's your health with yo-yo dieting when you gain and lose, 20
mhm.
pounds
That's
5
so
times?
bad for you.
So
Yeah.
bad for you.
So I think you're right. I think like I had to just stop. I don't actually totally remember, but it's, yeah, I don't think I was tracking macros. I think I was
Mhm.
just like, okay, I just need to eat. I just need to eat. I'm so hungry.
Mhm. You were the one that told me to stop because we had a tracker for coaching, and you were
Mm-hmm.
like, "We're done here.
Yeah.
I'm
This
going to
this
take
is
this off
going away.
our shared drive. We're no longer doing this." And that was
Yeah.
what. And honestly, that was my personality. I needed someone to tell me what to do at that point. I'm not there anymore, but I'm grateful that you were the one telling me what to do, and not someone in the industry who was just going to say harder, faster, stronger, stricter. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was I needed permission to just put it down. So
Mm-hmm.
we can be those people for whoever's listening.
Yeah.
You have the
Just put it
permission
down.
to put it down.
Hmm. And if this person mentioned ice cream, which I've been talking about, like let yourself for a while, if that's all you want and that's what sounds good, let
Yeah.
yourself eat ice cream every night for a couple
Yes.
weeks, or like, it probably will only be a couple weeks
Yeah. That's
to
the truth. That
be,
is the truth. I promise. I can
you're
promise
going to
that
be
it won't
over
be
it.
forever. Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, you will be over it. There was a period of time where like every weekend, like I needed to go get donuts. Like I was going to die if I didn't have this like giant high calorie treat.
Hmm.
I do not remember the last time I had a donut right now.
Yeah.
So like, but there was a period of time where I was totally addicted because I needed that high calorie boost.
Hmm.
And yeah, it just like, you will not crave that sugar forever. You will not. Your body will not.
Yes. I
Hmm.
100% co-sign that.
Hmm. Relationship with food with daughters. I think we covered that pretty well.
Hmm.
Oh, here's one. So a lot of these were kind of similar. What if you still want to lose weight? When is a good time for people to diet? Like, is it still worthwhile for everyone?
Yeah.
And then a final part of that is, how do you know when you're at the right weight?
So I'll start with the front part of that question, which was like, I think I remember this question, and I think I answered it gently on Instagram, asking like, how would you go about dieting now if you were going to do it today? And the short answer is I wouldn't. However, if I was trying to guide someone, I would say, do the things that you don't think you need to do. And what I'm talking about here are like integrative practices. How is your sleep? How is your stress? How is your strength? Are you getting sunlight? Are you getting some solitude? Are you finding time to be alone with yourself? I feel like when we get those things in line, everything else sort of just, it sounds like magic, but it actually kind of comes together. I think a lot of the reasons that we tend to overeat are a result of lack of sleep, too much stress, not having any downtime. It again, it all comes back to scarcity. All these behaviors I feel like are sourced from scarcity. And so when you can just shift and not add more stress, I think your body will naturally find whatever set point you are meant to be at. And I think, I don't know if set, I honestly don't know if there's science behind set point, or that's just an Instagram word that I've heard where, your body will find a place that just kind of feels really good. And that's where I am now. I have no idea what my weight is. I have no intention of getting on a scale, but I know that I'm at the right weight because I'm sleeping well. I'm appropriately hungry between meals. I'm not having cravings that aren't reasonably satisfied. And life and my body and fitness and nutrition is no longer my Roman Empire. That's how I know. What about you?
100% on that answer. Like, yeah, how do you know when you're at I think they said right size. I don't know if they said right weight or size because I wrote both down, but oh gosh, I do not think you need to even think about really the size of your clothes or your weight on the scale. It's totally a feeling, like what you just said. There is no like size or weight. It's how do you feel? Do you wake up and you actually feel good every day, or do you feel drained? What are your thoughts about food? Are you constantly thinking about food? Red flag. You're probably not eating enough or enough of the right things. Yeah. Are you, when you want to do a workout, are you moving in a way that feels good? That's like super sustainable, right? Are you checking in with your body every day? Do you have energy to do the things that you actually want to do, like play with your kids or like what work, like move your career forward, whatever your goals are? It's a feeling. It's a feeling. And I think actually this is kind of an interesting question because I wonder if it was asked partly because there's a disconnection. Like, are you even checking in with yourself every day? Do you know the answer to that? Like, do you know how you feel in the morning? Do you take time to ask yourself, like, how is my body feeling? Like, is my body craving any type of food or movement or activity or like emotion today, like connection? That's a great place to start for people, is to just like ask yourself a couple questions each day, any time of the day, whenever. I like morning, but
I like that even before you pick up your phone. That was part of
oh
my
yeah.
practice. I would do the meditation before I even touched my phone. And I felt like that allowed me so much more access before I looked at anything else. And you're right, asking those questions like, what is it I need today? And sometimes what would come up wouldn't be the same 4 hours into the day. And that would be okay too.
Yep.
But it is about a feeling. And if you don't have access to that feeling, then I think that for you is where the work begins.
Yes. Yeah. And as far as like when to diet, or if someone really feels like if all your answers to those questions are like no, or negative answers, and you do feel like you have weight to lose to be at your healthiest, happiest self, I do, oh gosh, I like hesitate saying this, but like macros did teach me so much about food. So I do think if there is like a quote diet I had to choose, it would be just tracking your food. Maybe like you say, we're recording this in July. Maybe you're like, okay, August, every Monday, I'm going to track my food, like maybe just one day a week.
And I
If
would even say track your protein. Start with just
right,
tracking your
just
protein.
protein. Yeah. And that I would really only recommend that to someone if they don't have really any knowledge about food, which I don't think is your audience or my audience.
I know that's the thing.
But because like if you already know how to cook with whole foods, if you already eat protein in a lot of your meals, you have some veggies, you have some, rice, potatoes, whatever carbs, bread that you like, then you probably don't need to track macros. you might just need to eat more actually if you're not
Yeah.
feeling well, even if you feel like you have some weight to lose. There's probably a little imbalance somewhere else going on, whether it's with the type of activity you're doing, right? Like chronic dieting for a long time plus HIT, which was a lot of
Mhm.
the women that I used to work with. That's
Yeah.
a recipe for a stubborn metabolism and actually
Mhm.
being at a body weight that you don't like over the long term.
Mhm.
Um, so that's going to take like the whole journey that we talked about today.
Yes, absolutely. No, I
You
think
don't
that's very
actually
well
need
said.
another diet though. You probably really don't.
Yeah, if you're not starting with the basics that we mentioned, that's make sure that that's where you go. If you're having
Yep.
issues with if you're not sleeping through the night, that's another thing too that I found that my body was waking me up because I was so hungry and I couldn't get back. And then I was exhausted at 6 p.m. I wanted to go to bed at 7 o'clock at night, and then I'd be up like cortisol was spiking at 3 in the morning. So that was a pattern for me that I didn't realize was related to hunger.
Hmm. Hmm. What thoughts do you have around food now? I think we kind of touched on this.
I mean, very few, to be honest, because I
Totally.
don't think about it all that often. I
I know.
love food. I think I really do have I really have naturally fallen into the 80-20 of 80% of the time it's single ingredient, minimally processed protein, fiber, veggies, with considerable carbs and fat compared to the way I used to eat. I used to really be very, very low on fat. Um, but then 20%, like we're a family on the go. Like there's convenience foods. Like I'll stop at Jersey Mike's and get a turkey sandwich, or what else? We love Chipotle in this house, and so it's like we're definitely not. Our lifestyle does not lend itself to always eating at home. But whenever I have the chance, I want to eat at home because I really do truly enjoy the way I eat and the food that I consume.
100%. I agree with that. Thoughts around food. The only thing that I feel like I still really have to think about is variety, just because I get in
Yeah, it's a
ruts.
good point.
Because, like, I feel like my days are busy. I do 100% of the cooking in my house. Um, so I get in ruts of like making the same thing. It's all like quote healthy food, but like
Yeah,
I make the same thing over and over, and variety is really good for your gut and
yeah.
to make sure you're getting the right nutrients and minerals and everything. So that's probably the only thing that I like spend energy thinking about is each week I write out all of our dinners and like make my grocery list based on that. And I
Mm.
do try to think like, okay, I want to have fish once a week,
Mhm.
because otherwise I just won't eat it and stuff like that. Like, what
Yeah.
can I buy a new vegetable instead of buying like spinach and broccoli again every week?
Yes.
That's like it. Yeah.
That's great. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Are some differences between your diet eating and eating now? We kind of touched on this too.
Oh, I would say volume foods when I was a dieter.
Oh, you were so
That
big on that. I was
oh,
like, you are
yeah.
eating way too much fiber.
Do you remember that? I was
You
upwards
would
of
eat
50
like,
grams of fiber.
yes, I remember that because I don't think I'd ever had a client who had eaten much fiber.
I
And you
remember
were like,
you
I'm bloated all the time.
yeah. I remember once having a conversation, you were like, "You ate an entire 10-ounce bag of broccoli by yourself in one sitting?" And I was like, "Yeah, is that weird?" But it honestly, I wasn't satisfied because I didn't have variety and I didn't have fat in my meals, and so I was trying to physically get to the point that I was so full that I couldn't eat more. So, volume eating was how I used to eat for sure. And now I mean, I don't wanna use it's just I I don't wanna say normal, but, like, I mean, because 'cause I'm still eating all the truthfully, I'm eating a lot of the same foods. I'm just eating them in much smaller quantities with a lot of other things mixed in the mix as well. Because I still love those foods, to be
True.
honest.
True. I would say like I feel a lot more freedom, obviously, with what I eat because there just aren't all these rules hanging over me.
Yeah.
So that feels really good. Like if I want to make like three starches in a dinner, I will.
Yeah.
Um, but probably the biggest difference is fats because
Yes.
with bodybuilding, which is how I spent most of my time dieting, it's very, very low fat diets. Like sometimes fats 20 to 25%, like hello, or
Mhm.
grams. So like
Ugh.
obviously I didn't have a period. I know there's like nothing for your hormones to work with.
Uh-huh.
And now, I mean, I have no idea, but I would just randomly guess 100+ grams. Like nothing. I used to be low fat or fat free everything. Total
Mhm.
opposite now. We're full fat
Yeah.
everything. I put heavy
Yep.
whipping cream in my coffee now. Like
Yes.
I eat butter, goes on everything.
Yeah.
avocado oil, coconut oil, I cook with all the time. I eat avocados, full fat Greek yogurt,
And to
like,
that end, you don't need volume because you're so
no,
satisfied
yeah,
and
it's super
so full.
satisfying. And like you're getting more of the fat soluble vitamins too.
Mhm. Yes.
So
Vitamin
yeah, I,
D.
I eat
Yeah,
like way higher fats with Max Lugavere. You know him, right?
I
Genius
do.
Foods guy.
Yeah.
He's been on Joe Rogan a couple times. He has a great book. Like he talks a lot about just fats for brain health as
Yeah.
well. Um, I love eating that way. There's no way in hell I would ever go back to a low fat way of eating.
Me neither. I know. I mean, I think about we consume dairy products in this house. And I used to be fat. I mean, growing up, it was always skim milk and it was
I
like low
know.
fat cheeses. And now
Yeah.
it's like, my kids would never put up with that shit. They'd be like, what is this? Get it out of here.
Yeah,
So
totally.
much more satisfying now. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Tastes way better.
Tastes way better and you need way less, like you just
Yeah.
want less. You're
Yeah.
like, this is another one of those crazy things where your body just decides that, oh, how about that, I actually don't want to eat like a giant mixing bowl sized salad because I have a different variety, a different mix of foods. It's just
Totally.
I know, when I was on the other side, I thought this was just a place that didn't exist, that I would just never have access to, but
Hmm.
you truly truly get there.
Yes, 100%. Okay, last one. Do you ever want to go back to your old body, which I interpreted as like a leaner body?
Absolutely not.
You're shaking your head.
You couldn't pay me. I mean, I don't know that there's an amount of money that would make me want to experience that again, which I know is kind of surprising. And I mean, there are different. I would have had different answers to this question, which is over in the last several years, which is probably why it's good that I'm talking about it today because it is like diet culture is everywhere, and there are a lot of things that could have lured me back if I really didn't focus on the end game for myself. But I think now about what my life would look like, and it's frankly really sad if I hadn't gotten out of that situation. I think it would have been sad for my husband, for my daughters, certainly for me, but all the people who matter most to me would have suffered too. And
Mm.
I'm not willing to sacrifice anyone anymore.
Yeah, I definitely would not want an old version of my body back either. One, because like I feel like I actually get hungry thinking about being that lean.
Yeah.
And I start like getting tired. I'm like, oh God.
Yes.
But like, cause I just felt so bad on the inside.
Mhm.
And I have come to a place where like I really love being a little bit curvier
Yeah.
and filling out clothes. I think you forget that like when you look that lean, especially with bodybuilding, just like totally shredded, you only look good on show day with a spray tan and a lot of makeup and your hair
Mhm.
done. Like getting in and out of the shower, I looked full on like I had an eating disorder.
Mhm.
Talk about, yeah, like sex life. Like, no, no, no. There was
Mhm.
that wasn't a
No
thing. Like you
space for
look
that.
kind of skeletal and not good. Like
Mhm.
you only look good on stage because you have like a tan and stuff. Otherwise you look,
Mhm.
it's not cute. It's not cute.
That
It's
I
yeah.
don't even know if I was ever stage lean, but I agree with
You
all of
were
those
really lean
things.
though. Yeah. Yeah.
I would agree though. I mean, I still see pictures that pop up and
I'm like, oh,
I exactly. I think about that and I just at the time it was the water I was swimming in, so I don't know that I certainly wasn't very aware of where I was at that moment, but I can see it now. I
right.
have
I
the
think
wisdom
I
of
thought I
time.
looked good in the moment, but yeah, same
Mhm.
thing. If I like see something come up on my phone or something from back then, I'm like, oh my God, I look like seriously, I need a cheeseburger like times 10.
Well, I will sometimes look at like old vacation pictures will come back and my memory will be jogged like, oh my gosh, I remember going to that restaurant and eating so much. I felt so sick that trip or that particular day. Like I can tie certain overeating and binging memories to certain experiences I've had when I look at photos. And that's really hard for me. And I cannot believe that I lost so much time to
Hmm.
those, like I lost so much time and so many memories and those experiences where like my family, God willing, looks back at those pictures and they're like, that was the best trip to wherever we were. And I'm looking at it like I was so sick then. I'm
Yeah.
sad for that. I'm sad for that version of myself.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Gosh, it is weird. It is weird to think back on those times and think about how you just don't feel good. So yeah, I would
Mhm.
never want that version of myself back. And I also think about, I've like grown and birthed a human since then and breastfed, and
Yes.
like my mind just switches to what my body did in that way, which to me, like,
Yes.
that is so much cooler than a bodybuilding trophy. Like, I
Yeah.
grew my daughter and I got to
Yeah.
nourish her, and my body did that for me. And honestly, like postpartum, never once did I think about dieting. I remember a friend reached out to me at one point who had a baby at a similar time. And she actually said, like, I am so excited to get into a deficit and like get this baby weight off. And
Okay.
that was not where my mind was. Like, I was so hungry, breastfeeding and thirsty all
Yeah.
the time. And it took about a year, but like,
Mhm.
I did not restrict my food in any way. I was eating more than I feel like I ever have. And just over time, again, like if you just give yourself some freaking time, which we're such
Yeah.
like a I need it now culture today, but
Mhm.
like my body did just naturally adjust postpartum too.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I never wanted to diet. And now I'm like, how could I do that to myself? Like, look
Mhm.
at what my body has given me.
Yeah.
How could I restrict her in such a way
Mhm.
again? So, like, hell no.
Absolutely. No, well said, and I think it's beautiful that you can look back and see all that you've gained, all that you've gained besides just the weight.
Yeah, some good stuff comes along with
Yeah.
that.
Hell of a lot of good stuff. Absolutely.
Ah, amazing. What a great place to
Yes.
end. Is there anything else you want to add or anything that like comes up?
I don't think so. I will say, I said this in my Instagram stories and I'll say it again here. I have a lot of patience for anyone going through this. If anyone ever wants to send me a voice message in DMs, and if you feel like you didn't get a question answered here, feel free to send me a note. I'm sure you'd feel the same way. But
Totally.
I had, it was a long and it felt like a lonely road when I went through it. And so if anybody ever has questions or wants to just share some thoughts, I always have space for that.
Yes, me too. DMs are always open.
Mhm.
I don't really think or talk that much, yeah, about like nutrition and fitness anymore because it just is this weight that has been lifted.
And we don't think
Um,
about it either.
and
That's the
you
other
don't think
thing.
about it as much.
And
Yeah,
so
but
it's not, when I'm going to stories, I'm not naturally going to things unless somebody pulls something from my story, which is how this all happened. It was just a thread
yeah,
somebody pulled
yeah,
from something I shared, and then it was like 100 DMs came in, like, talk more about this. But
yeah,
when I talked about this years ago, I lost hundreds of followers. People were
yeah.
like, I don't want to hear about this. I'm not here for that. I'm here for all
I'm here for the abs.
the
Yeah.
volume food and the abs. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I do sometimes like forget that people are in the thick of it. So for sure, like we are both here for you. And I have started to try to post meals again once in a while on my stories just to
Mhm.
without any macros. There are
Yes.
definitely not macros on there, but just like ideas can be
Yeah.
nice. And I do think that's
Absolutely.
helpful too to find people who still maybe share meals once in a while just to like have some extra ideas. Remember like how simple it really can be. It can be
Mhm.
so simple
I
to
know.
just like eat foods that sound good to you and are,
Mhm.
nutrient dense and
Yeah.
take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Is that it? I
Absolutely.
think so.
Yeah. Make some sourdough, more sourdough content, please. I'm here for
Oh,
that.
hell yes. Hell yes. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom with such openness and authenticity and honesty. Like I am so grateful that we found each other and
Yeah.
I got to walk alongside you for so much of this and that we're such good friends
I
now and
know.
we get to visit and
Thank you
yeah,
for
I'm
being open
grateful.
and opening your platform to talk about this, because I know it's not the focus of what you do anymore, and not a lot of people want to give it a lot of airspace. So I appreciate you, and thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, thank you. Let us know what you think of this episode, everyone. Share it with a friend, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye bye.